Right, so today I'm going over some new player traps, and the first one on the list is come a chameleon. I don't know the words. Right, I kind of get it. It's a very, very sexy looking weapon. It's probably going to be one of the first exotics you actually come across because the thing drops like bloody Kim Kardashian's pants. However, despite the fact that it may very well be the best gun you possibly have at the time, I promise you this thing is... I don't want to say bad because there are some good endgame builds that utilize this weapon. However, they are set up in a specific way to be able to use this weapon. Now, despite the fact that it is an AR, it is actually technically an SMG. It has the accuracy of an SMG, it's got the stability of an SMG. If what you're shooting is more than 5 feet away, good luck actually hitting anything. Its base damage and DPS is absolutely horrible. It struggles to put any form of sustained DPS down. It is just, in a nutshell, a pretty lackluster weapon and requires some seriously hefty buffing to even get this thing near enough usable. For low level players utilizing this weapon, it's not really going to give you that much. It really does require endgame max setup type builds to get the most of it. If not, you're just kind of beating yourself against a brick wall and it's really not going to help. Now, if you do just genuinely like the weapon, fine, go for it. However, it's meh at best. It can do some hefty damage if you're able to maintain the top 2 buffs pretty much all of the time. And using this thing at any form of range that isn't something like a chunga that you're going to hit regardless is mostly a waste of time. It's very inaccurate, it's not very damaging until you have the buffs, and it just feels overall quite lackluster, which is annoying because it's probably the best looking gun in the game. It looks phenomenal, it changes colour depending on what terrain you're stood on. It's kind of annoying they've put this much effort into the look and the feel of the gun, but it's just pure and utter dog water. Up next we have a weird one. This is Le Memento, or just Memento. It's not that this bag is inherently bad. There's nothing technically wrong with it. It just seems to be a weird thing of no matter what build people decide to put together, no matter how useful other things will be over Memento, people always take precedence on Memento. It's not so much that it's a bad backpack, like I said, it's more it just doesn't need to be in literally every build you make. If you're going for a DPS build, or your idea is to make a DPS build, Coyote's Mask is probably best in slot, really, so that's your exotic taken over. It will do a lot more than what Memento is capable of. Or Dodge City Holster. I believe even Bloody Knuckles, when used correctly, will actually outperform Memento. There are a lot better options for you to use other than Memento depending on your build. For skill builds, I am actually a fan of Memento. For me, Memento is best in slot, skill build backpack. Tank builds, there's better backpacks depending on what you're actually trying to do as your tank. For DPS builds, there's most backpacks. Any backpack with a decent talent on will outperform Memento. Yeah. It doesn't need to be in every build. That's literally it. Explore. Try new things. It comes a little bit of a trap because so many people will tell you Memento best backpack. This is factually incorrect. It's a very good backpack. It will fit into literally every build, but it's not necessarily the best backpack for every build. Up next we have a weird one. I've seen this a lot. Contractor's Gloves and Fox's Prayer. This is if you're a new player and you're streaming or you're playing with people and they tell you Contractors gloves or Fox's prayer, we're not trying to troll you or trick you. Okay, I have Grupo gloves on. I'm going to put a weapon on that doesn't actually increase exponentially. So 514, 518 on crit. This glove have 15% crit and another 12% crit roll. So technically I should be doing more. 524, 106. I've jumped up damage. I'm doing more damage despite the fact that I have less critical hit damage. So yeah, even though it says LMG and I'm using an AR, I have 149% critical hit damage on this build. If I put it back to Grupo gloves, check my stats again, I have 154% critical hit damage, and yet I can do more bullets, it's not increasing. 514, 518. And yet, if I then put Contractor's gloves back on, to give it a minute. Yeah, 524, 106. We're not taking the piss, we're not trying to troll you, not trying to scam you out of something. When it comes to DPS builds, Contractor's gloves and Fox's prayer, the knee pads, I've got them in the bottom right, there we are, because they have damage to targets out of cover. These are multiplicative values. They will do a lot more. Just because they say LMG damage or rifle damage doesn't really matter. They will do more damage than any other knees or gloves that you can think of, just because of those two stats: damage to armor, damage to targets out of cover. Final one for this, just to try and keep these small and bite-sized, is Bullet King. Already with new streamers, I've had a few varying degrees of level of conversation with some people. It kind of makes sense where they're going. Because it doesn't reload, you get more DPS. Therefore, Bullet King, because it doesn't reload, is the highest DPS in the game. Now, technically, that is true. If the damage on it wasn't piss. So yeah, like 610 was that like at max? I don't know, 660 roughly at max. So great, it doesn't reload. However, because we know how to calculate DPS, we can show things like this. L86 is doing roughly 30% more at all times in terms of burst DPS. It's hitting so much harder despite the fact that it's got a lower fire rate. You can also augment it with your talents and varying different roles to even get more out of it. However, if you are going to go, but what about the sustained DPS? There's not really much to cry over either, because although it only drops down to 3% in total output, pretty much every LMG in the game beats Bullet King. LMGs are like statistically the worst weapon archetype in the game, and the worst LMG in the game is Bullet King. Simply just because of how low its damage is. Its fire rate doesn't really make up for it. LMGs are incredibly unbalanced, and the most unbalanced out of all of them is the Bullet King. If you want to use it because ammo, fine, but it's really is a complete trap that I see both veteran players and new players fall into. It is 100% not worth it. Anyway, that just about does it for this video. I hope this is helping people out. I am planning on doing kind of rolling it back a bit to sort of help out newer players that have just joined through Steam, and then build it back up to pretty much where I was. I do have a variety of other guides and math breakdowns of varying gear sets, builds, talents, so feel free to peruse. I really should probably actually make better playlists for them. But yeah, in the meantime, have fun, good luck, and don't die. It's bad for the health.